welcome back to another episode of Wicked Darkness. I'm Kathy, your host. We're going to be continuing on with our episode of Robert the Doll. So listen along as we continue our conversation about Robert and his home in Key West. We talk about Robert and the things that would play out. Now, the documentary that you watched, Renee, did they interview anybody from Key West that ever got to see Robert in the artist's house itself?
I think there was a older lady who was like kind of a historian there in Key West, and she says that she remembers seeing when Gene was older and living there with his wife, that she would see the doll in the window, her and a group of her friends, when they would like go to school or walk by the house. They would see the doll in the window.
Yeah. And it became like a thing where they knew that Robert was there. And it would be like, they don't want to walk on that side of the street. They're going to walk on the other side, because it was like he was like staring into their soul, type thing. And they just knew that was Gene. That was the Otto house. And, they pretty much said, yeah, we don't want to walk there if we don't have to. Find a different way around to go to school, I guess. Some people didn't have a choice. They, lived right next door or down the street from them, so they had to go past it. But yeah, they would see Robert moving back and forth. So Jean passes away. And like I said, Annette or Anne, she still lives in the house, but she doesn't want to stay there. By the way, Anne is not buried with Jean and the rest of the family. She is actually buried up north in Connecticut. She did not want anything. That's how you know there was something wrong, when your husband passes away and you don't even want to be buried next to him. You don't want to stay next to him for the rest of your life. And she knew that he was not buried with Robert the Doll, so that that there was some kind of problem. But she's like, I need out of this place. This isn't my family home. I don't want to be here. So she decides that she is going to sell the house. But she did have it that there was a disclaimer that she wanted Robert to be back in the attic. He had to stay with the house. And so she said, that's it. You're going to stay in the attic. And so Jean passed away in 1974. And she moved out of the house, and 2 years later she was dead. But Robert was still in the house, laying lost in the attic, until a new family came along. And they had a 10-year-old daughter. And they ended up buying the house. You guys know this story at all with the family?
I thought that when she left, she didn't say anything. She just left the doll in the attic.
Well,
then moved.
Yeah, she when they were selling the house, she said that the doll had to stay. She didn't want to take it with her or anything.
Okay.
So it was a family that moved into the house with a 10-year-old daughter, and they ended up finding the doll in the attic. And the little girl's like, great, we got this little doll. He's so cute. Look at him. By the way, Robert has aged. And he continues to age. And when you think of age, you're like, okay, yeah, he's an older doll. He's going to start falling apart. No, his hair has turned colors to like a gray color or a whitish color. Obviously his clothes are turning yellow because they're getting older, but his face is also changing and everything. So he's been doing this the whole time. He's been aging with Jean as they've gone along. But the family ends up finding Robert. The daughter is playing with him, And it's not long before they find out there's something wrong with the doll. And they find that they wake up in the middle of the night and their daughter is screaming at the top of her lungs. And she's sitting there, like they walk in and Robert is on top of her face. He's like right there in her face. And they've seen, claims that he is alive. He's been roaming around the room. He's causing trouble and stuff like that. And even when she became middle-aged, she still claims that Robert was trying to kill her. So her dad took it upon himself to put Robert away in a like a chest and lock him up. And soon after that, her mom was, putzing around the house, and she noticed that her husband was in the car. She's like, "What are you doing in the car?" And like, "Why aren't you getting out of the car?" And she goes to check on him, and he's dead inside the car by carbon dioxide poisoning.
Oh, jeez.
And that was shortly after he had messed with Robert and put Robert in the chest. So that is the first time that there was some kind of death associated with Robert. So the family ended up moving out of the house, and the lady that the family that lived there were the Reuter family. And after her husband passed away, she found Robert in the chest. And she's like, "Well, that's where he put you." Well, she moves out of the house and goes and gets an apartment in Key West, takes Robert with, and is still talking to Robert as if Robert was, alive. And so in the apartment, she would also put Robert in the window, like sit him up in a chair for him to look out the window while she was gone. And for whatever reason, she had an incident. She had to go into the closet, and that was when she got attacked. Something came up from behind her and pushed her in the closet, and she was unable to get out of the closet. Finally, she was able to break out of the closet, and that's where she said, "That's enough." And that was August 19th, 1994. And so she said that, "I've had it." She took Robert over to the museum, and she said, "He's yours. I want nothing to do with him." 101 days later, she's dead. So, they're at the museum. Now, the museum is an old fort, a Civil War fort, and it was converted into a museum. And like I said before, Gene had a little bit to do with the beginning of the museum. And his artwork is on display at the museum. The museum we're talking about is Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, which is on the ocean side, right next to the ocean, actually. And they didn't know what to do with Robert, and they kind of put him in a storage area and kind of forgot about him. They put a blanket over him because it kind of creeped the staff out. And so after a while, they were noticing things were happening. Like a plumber came over to fix some stuff in some pipes in the museum, and he was attacked by Robert. And then it just, escalated from there, and they're like, "Okay, we got to contain this thing." And so they built a plexiglass case. It's not like Annabelle. When you think of Annabelle, she is inside like a holy fortress. The wood that they used, everything is like blessed. She is blessed once a month. They keep things, she's locked in there. They keep things pretty well covered with her. He just has plexiglass. That's it. And even when he's in there, he misbehaves. Some staff have seen, like, they've cleaned the museum, and then one of the staff members is like, yeah, there was little footprints. And when I look, Robert's feet are dirty. But he's in the plexiglass. And they have cats at the museum. The cats won't even go into his area. They're like, there's something wrong with him. So they want nothing to do with his room whatsoever. So, and it's not just one cat. They have several cats at the museum, apparently, and none of them will go into Robert's room. They all avoid it like it's a plague.
Well, that tells you something.
Right. And then, Robert has all these letters and stuff like that that surround his room as well. So that's like the backstory of Robert. And he's still there today. He's a big hit down there. He gets letters and emails and postcards and everything every day, by the thousands. And they read it to him. All of it. Everything is read to him. So they have 4 rules, the Robert rules. Do you guys know about the Robert rules?
I know at least 2.
What are the 2 you know about?
That before you approach him, you greet him. And secondly, you have to ask for permission to take a photograph of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that's the only 2 I know.
Don't you have to say goodbye to him also when you leave the room?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that one.
Technically, there's 5, though.
Oh.
So, yeah. And they only found that out by, chance. So, Robert's rules, and it is displayed in his room. Say hello, introduce yourself. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is be courteous when speaking to him. Don't be rude. Number 3 is say goodbye. Make sure you say goodbye to Robert. And 4 is ask permission before you take any picture of him. And the 5th one, which is an unofficial rule, is do not touch glass when you visit him. The plexiglass that I was talking about, you cannot touch that.
It's like a fish tank.
Kinda, yeah. Don't poke at it,
Don't tap the glass.
Right?
Exactly, because he doesn't like that. They do see him move from position to position in the case. They decided they were going to do ghost tours of him. So you can do like tours at night or during the day. And they, they'll start off in a different room and they kind of go through slowly. And then eventually you get into his room. But he's one that I don't think I would want to mess with. I mean,
What about
obviously.
bunk with Robert? Maybe they could do that.
Yeah, I don't
Sleep
know.
in the same room
Would you want to sleep in
overnight.
the same room though?
I think
Sure.
it'd be interesting. Yeah, Would you have a conversation or would he make noise?
Right?
It would take a lot of
Snore.
coaxing on my part.
Maybe I'm
Why
just
is that?
more dumb than brave. I just like, give it a try, see what happens. A little bit of both.
Right? So
And
there was. Oh, go ahead.
working at that museum must be unnerving. I mean,
Especially if you're the night custodian or something.
right?
Well, here's the thing. I was just reading on here, like, this is like the museum itself. They say he is haunted. So let me back up here. This is also, goes with the rules or whatever. It said that on August 18, 1994, that's when the former Key West Art and Historical Society associate Joe Peace was called from his office to the back of the museum, and that's where a lady laid Robert down in front of him, donating him or whatever. And she's looked to be like in her mid 50s. And so this is where we're talking about, the lady that Mrs. Myrtle, she was the one that donated. She says, "This is Robert. He is a part of the Otto family. I can't stand him being in my house anymore." So she went on to describe how she was locked Robert in a room after noticing that he had moved on his own. After the incident, she claims that Robert locked her in a room.
Oh, jeez.
Tit for tat there. Here you go.
Right.
She says he's haunted. And so Joe saw the value of the treasure and suggested that she might, want to keep it. And she's like, nope, I'm good. She didn't want to sell it. She didn't want anything in exchange. She wanted it out of her possession.
Hmm.
So she said that doll has to leave the house. And then she said, she died less than 3 months later. And he said he began to notice his own discoveries about Robert. He goes, I placed him in a small antique chair in my office, directly opposite of my desk. He seemed comfortable in the chair. I often looked at him in his direction, and he always stared back in an unchildlike way. Robert always seemed to be on the verge of stepping from his chair, and I always got this impression that he had moved his chair a few inches to the left and then back to the right. So I chalked a mark on the foot of one of the chair legs to find if he was moving the chair, but cleverly, he avoided being caught. So he shared an office with the museum director, Susan Olson. Susan didn't like the doll. Susan worked at night and refused to be in the office with Robert when he was there. It was hard to tell if the doll was moving or not. So we found it slumped down into its chair, and Susan freaked. So we moved the doll to the artifact storage room. And then for the next 2 years, Robert was only available by appointment. But by the mid-1996 era, a local ghost tour was encouraging guests to pay a visit to the doll. So the museum staff was afraid of Robert, and the employees would often suggest people come back on a day that they weren't working, or place the responsibility of retrieving Robert to a coworker. As the number of people who requested time with Robert increased, he was placed on a permanent display. Ever since, the public has been able to encounter what they have the closest of Robert, they can be by him. And then Robert is more than a doll. So it was like, yeah, we're good. We don't, you want to come see him? Yeah, come next week, and you can come on Thursday, and, Bonnie over there can help. I'm sorry I won't be there. Like, nobody wanted to mess with poor Robert. He just wanted to get out and say hi and, mingle amongst the crowd, see what it was like. He's been around since the 1900s, so, a lot's changed. You imagine if they gave him a cell phone? iPad,
Couldn't take a selfie.
That would be kind of interesting though if they tried that. What would happen? You imagine with technology?
Have to ask permission for himself.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think of Robert?
I'm on the fence on it.
Yeah.
Part of it's like, okay, I personally love haunted doll things. They're just neat. But there's a lot of deaths, maybe not a lot of deaths, but there's been a few deaths. There's been coincidental incidents and everything. Like Debbie says, how do you know these weren't just events that were just going to happen anyway?
Right. Well, that's the thing, like I said, they have other letters in here. Let me see if I can find another letter from somebody. Okay. Dear Robert, I had the great pleasure of visiting Key West in 2005. I believe it was the summer of Hurricane Denise. I'm sorry. This was the beginning of everything most horrible that could come to my life. I remember vividly the day we visited your museum, or rather the museum you now reside in. My family and my love of 5 years family were all there. We took pictures with you in your little case. I did ask if you minded, but I also had a faint disbelief, yeah, I can't even say it now, disbelief at the time. That has all changed since I remember the slight silliness I felt asking permission to take a doll's picture. I have wished many times since that I had not taken those pictures. Only moments after, the loudspeakers announced all tourists are ordered off the island because of the hurricane. And my life has been an agonizing wheel of pain ever since. The love of my life walked out of my world only 3 months later. It took me 3 years to find this love, and it devastated me. I nearly lost my mind. I have had scrapes with the law, lost a very good job, have been isolated from family members. The list of horrors go on and on. It's been one misfortune after another, way too many to list. Then finally, about 6 months ago, you crossed my mind. And I have decided that so much misfortune has such a short time, or in such a short time, has to be some sort of curse. So I'm writing to you to ask that you accept a heartfelt apology from me. I truly believe in things bigger than what meets the eye now. Cursed is how I believe I have been living my life ever since our encounter. I ask that you please extinguish your grip on my life so that I may find some peace. Never will I ask, or never will I question the unknown with so much disregard again. I feel now that there are forces in the world not to be laughed at. I have been plagued with misfortune and pain, but I have learned to question the impossible. So I hope that you will see fit to accept my apology, and this dark cloud will be lifted from my life. Sincerely, whoever is blank. So,
See, and there's where I have a problem. Okay, good example is myself. I'm the type of person when I keep something, I'm keeping it because I might need it.
mhm.
I throw it away, and then no sooner the next day, it's like, oh, I need that thing. I knew I shouldn't have thrown it away. I haven't touched it in years, but suddenly I need it.
Mhm.
It's a condition of the psychological mind to do this.
Right.
And when you attach something to an event that you just had an impact on, like for me throwing something away,
Mhm.
I'm going to tie everything to that one moment. So it's not necessarily the item itself was caused a curse on myself. It's just a matter of that, oh my God, these three things just happen afterwards. Like the old phrase of like whenever a celebrity dies, two more have to die after it because they
Mhm.
always die in threes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's just coincidental that it just happens. It's not a curse. It's not anything in particular, but that's where the psychological mind goes into right away. It looks for the one moment that goes, oh my God, that's right. I didn't say hi to Robert. Oh, geez, now I'm screwed. And you're going to keep that screwed feeling until you go, oh, I got to relieve this. And then you write a letter and you send it, and suddenly everything's wonderful again. So I'm more on the aspect of this is really a mindset. You drive yourself into that path, and you don't deviate from it until you make a conscious decision to
Mhm.
change it. Be it that it's a letter to someone, an inanimate object asking for forgiveness, whichever way they can get themselves out of it.
So it's more of fate that you had visited Robert at that point, and then all this bad stuff happened afterwards. And
Right. It's
that's where people are saying this is what caused it.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. What do
So
you
that's why
But
go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
That's why I always have a hard time believing in curses because you'd be surprised on how really strong the mind is.
Mhm.
If it wants to make you see bad things happen, you will see it. No matter how
Well,
true.
my
Go ahead.
question is for you guys is do you think Robert is actually haunted?
You know, I see a lot of things. I watched a lot of, especially within the last week or so, of videos of people sitting there saying, "Oh, Robert moved. I have it on video." And it's like looking at all this stuff. It's like, where are you seeing it moving? How is this haunted? Tell me where this evidence is. They say they seen it, but where's all the camera footage? Where's all the security camera footage, if there's any?
Hmm.
And once again, they always go with the theory of, well, the spirits affected the camera, so we couldn't catch it, but it moved. We saw it, or one person saw it, and we're supposed to take it at face value. That's the problem with a lot of these hauntings and stuff, is that because you always have one person saying it, you don't have anything to back it up, but we're supposed to take it at full face value. But
Hmm.
when we show you that there's possible other evidence, they don't want to hear it. They want to know that, oh, no, 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 I know what I saw. I can't be, I don't want to use the word stupid for seeing that, but they don't want to look the fool. So they want something to be at least given evidence that, oh, that's what I saw. Okay, well, I didn't think about that. And that's why I have a hard time believing in haunted dolls as much as I love them, but it's just hard to think, okay, this little thing's running around the room and everything like that, but yet we have no footage of it happening.
Hmm.
And yeah,
What
so
do you guys think of the people that have claimed that they witnessed Robert walking around the turret room when he was still at the artist house? Do you think it's kind of like, oh, that's the witch's house, that whole story, that's because it looked creepy because there's a doll sitting there, it looks creepy. Do you think that they went above and beyond and saying that, they saw this thing moving, but it actually didn't move, kind of
yeah,
the folklore thing? Do you
that's
think
my view.
what do you guys, Debbie, Renee, Kevin, what do you guys think?
I agree
Yeah, it's
with Mike.
almost. Oh, go ahead, Debbie.
Debbie, what do you think?
Um, I guess I'm on the fence too. I just can't imagine a doll being cursed or getting up and walking around. I mean, I would have to see it to believe it.
Hmm.
So,
Well, I think it's interesting that Robert gave the doll a genuine identity by giving his name to it.
Hmm.
So there is that mental aspect that Mika talks about where the mind does powerful things, but over time, did that invite something into that as a vessel, you know?
Hmm.
So I think, I could see where being on the fence, that makes sense, but it's also one of those things where I'd almost like to go see him in person, much like Annabelle, Annabelle, you're told, oh, don't stare the doll too long in the eyes. And I was talking to Tony Spiro a little bit about that, and it's like, well, I'm not going to do this to disprove disbelief, but curiosity is just something that's hard for me to let go of. So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of serious about, overnight with Robert. It'd be interesting
Hmm.
from a debunking standpoint. Could the museum allow overnight, not on a routine basis, but just to maybe get a little bit more concrete information?
Right.
Sure. Renee, what do you think?
I don't know, like at the beginning when I was reading a lot of it and hearing a lot about, excuse me, the stories, I was like, oh my God, I'm not crossing paths with this doll. But kind of listening to listening to, Mika, your assessment of it with, that psychological aspect, does your mind um,
Mm,
really go into that overdrive? And I've seen it also with, religious aspects. My grandma would say, oh, we have to, she had saints and everything, great, Catholic Mexican grandma. And she had saints in the house. And if something went wrong, or there were times where I would lose things,
Hmm.
go get 13 pennies, put it by Saint Martin, and you'll find your item.
mm.
And, there was always those little things. And if I didn't do it, then that's the reason why I couldn't find what I was looking for, because I didn't do this one step, right?
Right.
And so I think there's that connection too. And it makes me wonder if people are pulling from those connections also, those
Mm.
Mm.
religious connections with, saints, and if you do something, then your life is going to be better, kind of thing.
Sure. Well, and I think Kevin, you hit on a spot where we're talking about why did Robert give Robert the doll his name? And there's been studies done where, like children, teenagers, they have so much energy that they put out that they can manifest their own poltergeist activity even. So is that something that Gene did by putting so much energy into Robert that he manifested this entity? And now, that energy is now placed in the doll. And that's what everybody is experiencing. Or,
Yeah.
And Mika, you said the same thing where it was like they are putting so much emphasis on, I saw him, I met him, I, was very respectful, but then something happened and then, I leave and then, this went bad and this went bad and this went even worse. And, it was just bad timing and all that stuff. I mean, I could say that when I left family reunion and on my way home, I felt like I was getting a UTI, and I know TMI people. But it ended up where I ended up having a kidney stone. And it was because I was in the ocean and my husband's like, oh, it's fine. And there's like these 6-foot waves. Yeah, I'm throwing you under the bus, Scott. We're out in the ocean because I'd never been in the ocean before. And I had these 6-foot waves hitting me and they hit hard.
Oh, yeah.
And then they knocked a kidney stone that I had brewing inside me that I didn't know about. And by the time we drove back to Wisconsin, it was there.
Yeah.
And so could I sit there and go, well, it was, I wasn't nice to so-and-so. And because of that, I had this bad luck. And then I had to go to the hospital as soon as I got back. And then it turned into this and I was out of work for a month. And, because it turned into another thing where it was like, to get kind of graphic. So when you have a kidney stone, they have a stent that they place in you. It's a long stent. Okay. So it's supposed to be able to clear things up and so that you can basically pee. Okay. So in my case, mine was supposed to stay into the bladder and then kind of go up towards the kidney, but not go in the kidney. And when they take the stent out, when they put it in, you're under anesthetics. You're in the OR. And then when you get out and you have the stent removed, you're supposed to have it removed within about a week. Well, my doctor was at a conference and I was having pain that whole time. And when she got back a week later, she's like, well, why are you in so much pain? I don't know. I never had a kidney stone. I don't know. And so she goes in to look for the stent and she can't find it. And somehow, some way it like uncurled itself because it's got curls on both ends. It uncurled itself and little hooks was sitting right there inside my bladder about to go back up into the kidney. And that's why I was having so much pain. So could I just sit there and go, well, I had a fight with a family member at the family reunion. And because of that, then I ended up getting, this kidney stone. And then because of that, I ended up having, the stent undoing itself and causing me more pain. And then I had to go back into the OR. It's just a tumble of things. So same thing with Robert. I saw Robert. I didn't ask for permission. My daughter was sticking her tongue out at him, and my son is tapping on the glass. And then when we left, all of a sudden there's like a horrific traffic accident ahead and I didn't see it. So I swerved real quick and I almost hit a tree. And then when we got home, I was taking the garbage out and I don't know, I slipped and fell on the ice. I mean, it's like a continuous thing. But it goes back to what Gene would say when he was a kid. Robert did it. Robert did it. And
it was Robert.
Yeah. So, I mean,
a whole tangent.
I was a little yeah. You shush there, mister. You didn't want to be a part of the podcast now. So here's the thing though. I talked about where I got Robert from the museum. I ordered him online. And I have him in my office usually. Now he's right next to me. But I normally have him behind me in my office. my dogs like to come into my office and hang out. Well, my one dog, Bella, was like, she normally comes in. I have a blanket on the floor for them so they can just chill, and there's a little pillow. She came in by the door, and her sister sat down on the blanket, no problem. Her brother sat down on the blanket, no problem. And she comes in and she just like growling. And what is she looking at? I put that little postcard that they have of Robert, and it says Robert did it, in a picture frame, and I put it on the wall. And she saw that and is like hair standing up.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what's up? Why are you doing
Mhm.
that? And I can see like what she's looking at. And the only thing that's there is the picture of Robert. She was not having it. She was just like adamant, like, you need to take that down. I don't want that right.
Right.
And she finally, I took it and moved it to a different spot, and she was okay with it, but she was not having it. She was just like, there's something not right with this. I don't know what it is, but I don't like it.
Hmm.
But, dogs sense things that people can't.
Yeah, but that's like Sinner saying that you're identifying something, you're giving, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say humanity to a picture.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of times with animals, when they see something that's not normally there, they will get upset with it, not necessarily saying, "Oh, that's Robert the doll. He's pissing me off."
Right.
So it could be the fact is that you put something there that wasn't there before, and it's always or the dog's always identifying, okay, that wall always has 3 pictures. Now there's 4.
Mm-hmm.
So something's wrong, something's different. And it's a picture of a face, that's another thing. So, but I I love animals and everything. I'm really I do a lot of research on behavior of, especially with dogs, because I just absolutely love dogs. And I know they have certain reactivity to certain things, and just to say it's reacting to a picture is very, very difficult to pinpoint down. Now
Mm-hmm.
I can understand if it was the doll itself, because it's like an uncanny valley for dogs.
Mm-hmm.
My dogs get freaked out when they see my old teddy bear from when I used to have when I was a kid, 3-4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
They hate it. But it is creepy looking, but it's only because it's the uncanny valley for them. They're always identifying something that's just, okay, that's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard with animals and stuff.
I agree. It was just kind of funny at the time that was the one thing out of my office. And I've got some weird stuff in my office. Not as strange as yours, Kevin. I mean, you kind of
Yeah.
crossed mine, but it's they're used to seeing weird stuff in my office. It was just that one time that she saw, after I had gotten Robert and everything, and she's just like, oh no. I mean, she's not one to, you guys have all met Bella. She's the one that does not care about personal space. She's in your face, licking you and everything else. But this one was like, she was not having this. She was
Hmm.
like, you need to get that thing out of your office. I don't want anything. So, and I did have Robert down, the doll itself. I had him down by that picture area, and I had moved him up, and I moved the picture off to another wall similar to where it was, but just a little bit farther off. And then she was fine. She's been fine since then. But it was like that initial thing. And I just sat there because it was when I found the card saying, by the way, we did ask for permission from Robert to send you this, and that you could have this doll and this book and whatever. And it was weird because I was just like, wait, what? You have to ask permission to send this stuff to me? And even like the chair, I got one of those too. And I'm like, wow, you guys really do send out like these disclaimers of I did ask permission. I don't know.
The way you can't sue them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But Robert's not the only one that's haunted though.
Isn't Emma?
Um,
There's a dog called Emma, and supposedly she's extremely haunted, as much as Robert.
yes. She's not well known as Robert. Robert and
Right.
Annabelle are pretty much up there together. But yeah, she's not as well known yet.
Right. Give it
But
time.
yeah. But yeah, in the Otto family though, Robert is not the only one that haunts that family.
Isn't it
and
his his wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was in the turret.
Yeah, the room that she didn't like, which is
Yep.
Robert's room,
Now she's
he
trapped there with
now
him.
haunts that room. And they're like, well,
Interesting.
is it kind of like her own torture?
Right, or hell.
Yeah. Like, is everybody watching her own purgatory happening in front of them? Because, the only thing I don't understand is why she's always in a wedding dress. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it wasn't the wedding that she wanted.
It's
That
possible.
her and Jean didn't have the best of relationships and wasn't really what she thought she was getting herself into. I don't know.
Symbolic torture.
Yeah. However, and I told you about Anne going to school, the finishing school to teach her how to be a good housewife. Which I think women nowadays would probably be like, you're not sending me to that school.
Right.
Because my son made the stupid mistake of saying that, like, oh, I'm not doing the dishes. I'm not a woman. I'm like, I looked at him. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, he's like, I'm sorry, you're my creator. I go, yeah.
Make him a sandwich.
Make him a sandwich. It was a sandwich. I thought it was the dishes.
No,
Probably was both.
Sandwich.
Okay, he's
Mm.
he's just clarifying because he knows that he's still on mommy's little poo-poo list. Anyway, so Anne, she is actually known for key lime pie. Did you guys know that one?
I love
Really?
that.
Yeah, it's actually in the book too. I found a news article about it, and yes, I have the recipe.
Ooh.
But the thing is, they have it's Anne's key lime pie, but the article I found, the title was Robert the Doll's Killer Key Lime Pie.
Oh,
No, that's got a nice ring to it.
Right?
I'll try a slice of that.
Well, and then they have the picture of Anne, and she's like standing over this woman with the key lime pie, and she's got this look like, you're going to eat my pie. It's like this woman's like, yes, ma'am, I'm going to eat that pie. I don't want to make you mad. It was one of those type things. But yeah, oh, there's the picture too. I'll have to send you. I'll put it on Facebook of the picture. But yeah, this woman's like, oh, it's good pie. Yeah, great. But yeah, she was known for her key lime pie, which she ended up getting from her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law was really good at it. But she ended up 37 years ago, Ann Parker Otto traded a grand piano and a budding career in the concert pianist composer for a role of artist's wife. And Jean's career has come first, as we all know now. And she took it upon herself to learn more about the family and, being a wonderful host and gifted homemaker and everything. And she put out that she has a famous key lime pie. And everybody knew Anne's pie. So I thought that would be kind of interesting to even undertake, maybe possibly. I know my family is probably like, yeah, you don't bake, but it doesn't seem like it's that hard. Yeah, my husband's laughing right now. He knows it's true. What do you got to say over there, dear? Because he does all the cooking basically in our house. My mother never really taught me how to cook much. Not to say that I can't cook. I do cook, but it's my husband's better at it. I will admit it. My husband's a better cook. But neither one of us do a lot of baking. I think if we're doing baking, it's probably like an equal thing too, even though he'll probably say no, he does more. But yeah, I'm gonna put out there on the thing the key lime pie, which is kind of interesting. It's not hard, does not have a lot of things in there.
No.
Egg whites, sweetened condensed milk. The thing I thought was weird, it was saying juice of 7 large key limes, which is about a half a cup. I'm
Hmm.
like, what do you consider large? Large
Aren't
back
teenagers
then?
small?
Right. I mean,
lemon size.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. Were there larger back then though? I mean, it
Yeah, they
just
come in
has
various
7
sizes.
large key limes. So, I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't seem like it's that much. It's just, it doesn't have for the shell, the pie shell itself.
Hmm.
There's no recipe for that, so I guess you can
Hmm.
basically use any kind of, shell, but the actual ingredients of the pie, they have that. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that
Hmm.
she was known for that. Um, we kind of talked about everything. I mean, uh, if anybody that's listening has wronged Robert in any kind of way, please send a letter to him and apologize profusely, apparently. There were a few things that I did find that what Robert does. What does Robert do, the doll? Before he was moved to the museum, he was seen by locals moving through the house. By the way, the artist's house, if you guys wanted to know the address, was 534 or is 534 Eaton Street in Key West. They would see him moving on his own, laughing, throwing objects. People have seen Robert's chest. That's the thing that they would see, that they
Hmm.
claim to see, is his chest moving while he's in the plexiglass case at the museum, as if he was breathing. People have also felt something was touching them by their knee.
Hmm.
So, but could it be the cat's tail walking by? I don't know. And then they said that at Robert's room, people have reported feeling chills and seeing orbs. Well, I'm not a big thing about orbs, it's hot down there. There's a lot of moisture. Bugs, especially at certain times, they have what's known as love bugs. We discovered that when we went to Florida. Those things came all the way back with us. Those things were just
Hmm.
ridiculous. And then they say, how does he give permission? People want to know.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. He doesn't. People who experience problems with Robert are usually disrespectful to begin with. So asking for permission from an entity is always a bad idea. When they say, ask permission, it's more of a legend thing than
Yeah.
anything. How does Robert curse you?
Oh, you son of a.
Right? Reported days, weeks, months later after being disrespecting Robert. Mechanical problems on their cars, accidents, strange occurrences, health issues. One lady even broke her back. Marital problems, financial problems. Well, you spent probably a fortune to go see him to begin with.
Hmm.
Should have went to Disneyland.
Right. Well, then they lost their luggage, so they got that.
Yeah.
Somebody said they were struck by lightning.
What?
Yeah.
Mm,
Don't stand under the tree.
right.
Don't have
Yeah.
an umbrella up.
No golfing during lightning.
Right. I was gonna say, hold your golf club up.
Right. They did say there was another murder, or not murder, I should say. Robert the Doll killed somebody else, allegedly, besides the father of the 10-year-old girl. They said that a Key West ghost tour guide had the image of Robert the Doll tattooed on his arm. And he
Oh,
died
yeah.
shortly after it was completed.
Could have been
Okay.
hepatitis.
Right. Dirty needles.
Yeah, 30 needles.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot
I
of
don't feel
dirty
so
shops
good
around.
anymore.
Well, it's kind of like you don't get the tattoo of your significant other, girlfriend, boyfriend. You can get your children, your mom, your dad, whatever.
Right.
Right.
Robert the Doll, you're not in a relationship with him.
At least
He
you
obviously
hope.
does not want to be in a relationship with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Apparently, Mrs. Otto, Anne, she went insane too.
Hmm.
They're saying because of it. Yeah, that's pretty much all we got for Robert the Doll. What do you guys think? That's a lot.
There's a lot. I watched I don't know if I can't remember if it was the documentary or if it was on Amazon Prime has a series called Lore, and
Yeah,
there
love
was an
that show.
episode about Robert the doll there, and I thought his wife tried setting the doll on fire, and it ended
Oh,
up back in the house.
oh,
Of course it does.
So, yeah, exactly, right. And of course, you look at Robert now, and there's no indication that this thing's ever been lit on fire. So,
Right.
but yeah, that's I don't know if that's hype, or sensationalism they threw into the documentary, but I'd
Well,
like
when I
to
say
know more about that.
don't try to burn a Ouija board, don't try to burn Robert,
Yeah.
you
mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah, voodoo dolls and
Dante
things
put it in
like
the
that.
garbage.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It
I
was in
have
my closet the next day.
Yeah, my closet started on fire after I burned my Ouija board. I've
Right.
heard stories like that before.
yeah.
Heard wouldn't burn.
Right.
I
Yeah.
would still really like to go see Robert. It's just so interesting that a
Yeah.
kid has that much conviction to give a name and then change his own identity to really delineate
Yeah, that's the
this is
weird
his
part.
identity and now this is mine.
Right. It's
Right.
almost
That
like
to
the
me is,
doll's controlling him.
yeah, and to stick with it.
Yeah.
That to me is super interesting
Yeah.
because what's really happening in that dynamic? Does he have some sort of mental illness? Well, he gets through college, he goes to France, and he comes back. So he's successful. It doesn't
Right.
hmm
mean that he's not mentally ill, but to still then identify with him again when he comes back, it's just, you don't hear of that. Kids might pick a name for something and then it's off to Goodwill when they turn, uh,
Exactly.
the tweener age, right? They're like, oh, I'm not gonna hang out with this doll ever again.
Right.
But that whole relationship dynamic is just quite unheard of, or at least very, very rare.
Mm.
Yeah,
And
because
especially you give up your name and you stick with it. It's just that's the wow factor to me. Like there's something very unusual there.
Yeah.
well, and it lasted until he was 74 years old when he died. You know?
Right.
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 That's conviction right there.
Right.
Right. Stick to itiveness.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, and
That's
then,
incredible.
like you said, he went away to college. He forgot about him basically.
Right.
And then it was
Yeah.
like, oh, there you are. I missed you so much. And then, by the way, we're gonna have him sleeping at the end of our bed, and
Yeah.
I'm
You're part of this
creating for
marriage
him.
now.
Right. Like the
Not the
wife is
three-way we
now
were
turned
hoping.
into the child.
Right. Well, and
It's
then
a
I
what's
little,
love it, Mika.
interesting too is when he leaves, he's successful. So was there a curse then at that time? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like what
Because,
what caused him to come back to the States? That's an interesting question, Renee.
right.
right,
Well, mom passed away, but his one brother turned into a doctor. He
right,
was very close to his sister, apparently. She was like the family historian, and she had
Hmm.
like hundreds of letters between her and Jean throughout the years. But if anybody knew anything about the relationship between Jean and Robert, it would have been her because
Hmm.
she was the oldest and she saw it all. Um,
right.
but it's weird. It's just a weird situation. And like I said, mom passed away, so mom had been living with Robert in the attic. And there's not she doesn't talk about any kind of problems at home when he had passed or when he had moved to Paris.
Right.
There's nothing in there, not that I've seen, of any kind of documentation of Robert messing around in the house while, grandma's downstairs,
Yeah.
or in this case, mom, I guess, because he's just there and he's part of the fabric of the house and totally
Right.
forgotten.
hmm
So does he put back that energy when he comes back in?
Could
Mm.
be reviving it.
Yes.
Hmm.
Goes dormant, and
Yeah.
then he comes back and sees it, and everything comes flowing back to him again.
Hmm.
So it's just like he resurges or
Right. So is it kind of like a psychosis type thing?
Could be.
Oh,
That would
interesting.
be that would be where I would start going with, is at least he has some level of psychosis to
Mm.
he's character imprint on something else. He puts himself into that so he becomes what he wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
So reflects on him.
Well, and that was kind of like his artwork too, is like he
mm,
would paint pictures, but it had to mean something. Obviously, as an artist, you want things to mean something
Right.
to you. But he wouldn't just paint things just to paint things. It really had to mean something.
Right.
Um, and obviously Robert was one of those, kind of painting ideas without the paint. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just a strange dynamic between them.
yeah.
Because it's not like Annabelle. Annabelle was brought in as these people are older. These were nurses that
Right.
ended up getting her as a gift from mom, who bought her at a thrift store or an antique store and brought her to them. And she was
Right.
already whoever did whatever to Annabelle then, that was brought into their home. But this was a clown brought from Germany to Key West, and then within moments he had made this connection with the doll and said, your name is going to be Robert now. Or the doll says, my name's going to be Robert and you're going to
Right.
be Jean. And oh, here's my clothes, you can wear my clothes. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, kids do strange things, but
Yeah. I don't know where I read it, but I remember reading it years ago that when you get a doll, you're not supposed to name it. Because if you name a doll, you give it life. That was at least the superstition about it, is that's the reason why you never named your dolls real names. Because
right,
once you do that, you imprint something to come into it.
right. Well, same with the Amish. When you look at an Amish doll, they don't have faces.
No, they don't.
Because they don't want them to give them an identity.
Yep.
It doesn't
Something
matter if
to
it's a
come
girl doll or a boy doll. None of them have faces.
Yep.
So,
Because they're supposed to be soulless and empty.
right. Yeah. Just there for entertainment.
Yep.
And that's it. An inanimate object.
I think that's the reason why dolls have such a reputation for fear. It's because they do have this little identity that you could just imagine hearing little footsteps running through the house at night while you're just sitting there by yourself. And it's like, okay, that's just a little creepy now.
Right. And Key West is surrounded by water. And in the paranormal world, we know that water gives energy. And so, I've talked about it before on some of our podcast episodes where we're in a location and there's water flowing under the location and my EMF detectors are going off. So you can just imagine an island that is surrounded by oceanic waters and the flow that's coming around that place,
Yep.
It's gonna have some energy. That and the history of the location.
Yep.
So I don't know. Like I said, it would be interesting to see Robert at nighttime or anytime really, to see if he does do any kind of mischievousness.
Right.
Is it just, I don't know, maybe during the hurricanes, rumbling through or something like that. It's now shifted his chair from the movements, and now they come back to work, and oh my gosh, Robert has moved.
Right.
I don't know. Never lived through a hurricane, so I don't know how powerful. I know they're powerful, but
yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, family members have lived through it, but I have never lived through it. I've seen like tropical storms come through that area too, and those can be pretty gnarly with the winds and stuff.
Yeah.
So, they're, like I said, they're right across, like on the side of the ocean.
Yep.
So they're right there at any kind of storm. I don't know. The fact that the cats don't want to go in the room. Cats are the guardian of the underworld. So
That
they
is
have
interesting.
a more sixth sense than the dogs do. So that, or they just see this doll sitting there and like, no. They're
Let
just
them deal with
suspicious
it.
of things anyway. They're like, no.
Right. Another person.
Yeah. Ugh. What'd they bring in this time? Why can't I knock that off the chair?
Yeah.
Why did I gotta put this glass there? I just want to go and swipe at it, just
Mhm.
because that's how cats are. I want to knock it off the table or whatever. I don't know. So I think we kind of hit everything on this one. We had a good conversation of Robert. You guys open to seeing Robert at some point?
I'd love to.
Yeah.
Even though
Absolutely.
I'm on the fence and whatchamacallit, but I'd still love to see it. Just to see it.
Can't say no to Key West either. So.
Oh, no kidding.
Sun, sand,
Yeah.
I wish I
Ocean.
would have known
crocodile.
that 13 years ago. We were down there for a cruise. We were in Key West. Wasn't really interested in paranormal back then, and darn it, I missed the chance. So
I live
now I got
down
to go
there, so I'm
back.
like, oh,
Oh, okay. So
I
you're
did the
even
same thing. I went to, I was in Long Beach, California. My hotel was right next to the Queen Mary. Went up on
oh,
it, never went on it. I'm like,
oh,
Really?
I should
Oh
have.
uh,
no.
Yeah.
right?
I'm like looking at it. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. We should go
Big
on
boat.
that. And, oh
Yeah.
yeah, maybe later. Well, later came and went, and we never went on it.
later became never.
Yeah. Like, yeah, there it is. Now
Queen Mary's the best. It's one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
it was one of those
Yeah.
shoulda, coulda, woulda, but didn't, and now I kick myself in the rear end because I didn't. But it was the one time that I played football.
Oh,
Renee,
right.
yeah, I was playing in Long Beach for our championship.
Okay.
And, yeah, that's where they put us up, was in that hotel right next to the Queen Mary.
Queen
And
Mary.
our coach was like, all right, guys, we got to get to the field. And, we're walking by, and I'm like, oh, that'd be sweet. They're like, oh, we're going to be here for another night. It's fine. We can come back. Yeah, sure. Nope, that never happened. We spent like a whole night looking for a 7-Eleven. That never happened either. And I
Ugh.
missed my opportunity of the Queen Mary.
Oh man.
So if you ever have a chance to see something paranormal,
Do
take it.
it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're not going to regret it. Just be respectful, not disrespectful. And then always say goodbye, no matter what. Even on investigations, we thank
Hmm.
the spirits when we're there, and we're like, we introduce ourselves, we say hello, and when we're done, thank you for letting us come in, because it's technically their place, not our place. So thank you for letting us come in and visit with you, and taking the time to talk with us. But we're gonna leave now, and you're gonna have to stay here. I'm very sorry, but you can't come with us, and just leave it that way. Don't sit there and say, oh, you can come with. No, Robert, you stay where you are in Key West.
Yep.
You don't need to come with me. It's fine. I'll take your little stuffed animal of you. That I'll keep that, but you yourself stay here.
Right.
Just in case there is something that is attached to you that's not good. I don't need that in my life. So thank you for being who you are and letting people come around and, seeing you and talking with you and taking your picture and all, but that's where we kind of end it with you.
Yep.
So, I guess speaking of ending it, I think we've kind of hit all the ins and outs of it.
Right.
If you guys, like I said, if anybody has any stories for us about Robert, or any experiences that they had, please let us know. We want to hear it. If you have a chance to go there, like I said, the home of the Ottos is now a bed and breakfast. And then you can always go to the museum and go see Robert in his new residence. And there's lots of historical places down there. Hemingway's home is down there. That's the other famous home that's in Key West. And the fact that it's pretty much the southern part of the United States that you can go to before heading over to Cuba. So, I mean, it's a great place to go and visit. Nice warm beaches and everything.
Beautiful beaches.
And people are very friendly down there, and you learn a lot. And pretty much walking distance around everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I guess that's pretty much where we're going to leave it. Unless you guys have anything else you need to say about Robert, or.
Well, if you don't see me in the next week, Robert did it.
That's right. Just remember,
Yeah.
Robert did it. It wasn't us. It was Robert. Robert did it.
Yeah.
Maybe don't listen to us in the car while you're driving.
Right?
That might have been the beginning disclaimer I should have had. Sorry.
Yeah.
Robert
There
did
you
it.
go.
All right. Well, for our skeptics, make sure you keep us grounded. And for our believers, keep believing. I'm Kathy, and you guys have a great night.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.
Bye.